"All ships, retreat!" came the panicked voice of a Zephyrian captain. "The humans have weapons we cannot fight!" The remaining alien vessels began fleeing the solar system as fast as their engines could carry them. Ships that had arrived in perfect formation departed as a disorganized mob of terrified survivors. Admiral Cross watched them go without attempting to pursue. His goal had never been to destroy every enemy ship. It had been to send a message that would be heard across the galaxy. Earth could not be conquered. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving transmission from the fleeing alien ships. They are broadcasting on all frequencies." "Put it on speaker," Admiral Cross ordered. The voice that came through the speakers was shaking with fear. It belonged to Sub-Admiral Kethvar, now the highest-ranking surviving Zephyrian officer. "Attention, all species of the galaxy," he said. "The humans of Earth cannot be defeated. They fight with weapons we do not understand and tactics we cannot counter. They are like chaos itself made into war. Any species that attacks them will be destroyed." Captain Lisa Yang, who had been watching the battle from the UES Defiance, finally spoke up. She had been quiet throughout the fighting, but now she had something important to say. "They called our tactics primitive," she said to Admiral Cross. "They said we fought like wild animals with no honor or discipline." "And what did we prove to them?" Admiral Cross asked. "We proved that sometimes the old ways work best against those who have forgotten how to truly fight." The battle for Earth was over, but its effects would be felt across the galaxy for generations. News of humanity's victory spread faster than the fleeing alien ships. Species that had been enslaved by the Zephyrians suddenly found the courage to declare their independence. Military commanders throughout the galaxy began studying human tactics, trying to understand how such a small force had defeated such a large one. But perhaps the most important change was in how other species viewed humanity. Before the battle, humans had been seen as primitive newcomers who would make good slaves or trading partners. After the battle, they were seen as a species that should be treated with respect and caution. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Admiral Cross looked out at the debris field that had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. His small force of 50 ships had accomplished something that military experts would study for centuries. "All ships, stand down from battle stations," he ordered. "Send rescue teams to assist any alien survivors, and prepare a message for the Galactic Council." "What should the message say, Admiral?" his communications officer asked. Admiral Cross thought for a moment about everything that had happened, about alien arrogance and human determination, about the power of fighting for your home versus fighting for conquest, about the difference between rigid tactics and adaptive strategy. "Tell them," he said finally, "that Earth is open for peaceful contact with any species that comes in friendship. But also tell them that anyone who comes as a conqueror will learn what happened to Admiral Vexithara's fleet." The message that went out from Earth that day was simple, but clear. Humanity was willing to be a friend to any peaceful species. But they would be a terrible enemy to anyone who threatened their world. As news of the battle spread, other species began to approach Earth with trade offers, scientific exchanges, and diplomatic missions. The humans who had once been dismissed as primitive were now recognized as one of the most innovative military forces in the galaxy. And in quiet corners of the galaxy, enslaved species whispered to each other about the humans who had fought impossible odds and won. They spoke of tactics that made no sense but somehow worked. They told stories of 50 ships defeating thousands, of supply vessels that could destroy flagships, and of a species that refused to surrender even when all hope seemed lost. These stories gave them hope. If the humans could defeat the mighty Zephyrian Empire, perhaps freedom was possible for everyone. The galaxy would never be the same. And it all started because some alien elites made the mistake of laughing at human tactics. They were not laughing anymore. Admiral Vexithara was beginning to realize the truth. The humans were not just winning the battle. They were fighting a completely different kind of war, one that the aliens were not equipped to understand or counter. "How many ships do we have left?" she asked quietly. "Less than 200 combat-effective vessels, Admiral," Sub-Admiral Kethvar replied. "And most of those are requesting permission to withdraw. 200 ships out of the thousands that had arrived just hours earlier." The largest military force in galactic history had been reduced to a few scattered squadrons by 50 human vessels and some hidden weapons. But the battle was not over yet. Admiral Vexithara still had one card left to play. Her flagship, the Re. Eternal Dominion, was the most powerful warship ever built. If she could position it correctly, she might still be able to turn the tide of battle. She had no idea that Admiral Cross was counting on exactly that decision. Admiral Peter Cross stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching his tactical display with the patience of a chess master about to win the game. Everything had gone exactly according to plan. The alien fleet was scattered and demoralized, but the most important part of his strategy was still to come. "Communications. Patch me through to Commander Morrison," he ordered. Jake Morrison appeared on the main screen. He was no longer on the alien council ship where he had started this war. Instead, he was aboard a small stealth vessel hidden near Saturn's rings, coordinating with resistance movements across the galaxy. "Admiral," Jake said with a tired smile, "the diplomatic mission was a success. Our friends throughout the galaxy are ready to move." While the battle had been raging around Earth, Jake had been busy with his own mission. The Zephyrian Empire controlled hundreds of worlds, but many of those worlds had never wanted to be conquered. They had been waiting for someone strong enough to challenge Zephyrian power. "Execute Operation Freedom," Admiral Cross ordered. Across the galaxy, something unprecedented began to happen. On 50 different worlds, enslaved species that had been working in Zephyrian mines and factories suddenly stopped working and started fighting. Resistance groups that had been hiding for years emerged with weapons and determination. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, the six-legged Arthak miners put down their tools and picked up improvised weapons. They had been slaves for 30 years, forced to dig up precious metals for Zephyrian luxury ships. Now they were free to fight back. On the ocean world of Trappist 1E, the aquatic Hydran people disabled the underwater processing plants that refined fuel for the Zephyrian fleet. Without that fuel, enemy ships throughout the galaxy would be stranded. On the desert world of Wolf 359c, the crystalline Quartzi people sabotaged the communication relays that allowed the Zephyrians to coordinate their empire. Suddenly, Admiral Vexithara could not contact her commanders on distant worlds. "Admiral," Sub-Admiral Kethvar reported in panic, "we are receiving distress calls from across the Empire. Rebellions have started on dozens of worlds simultaneously." Admiral Vexithara stared at the flood of emergency messages. Her perfect empire was crumbling from within. How had the humans organized resistance movements on worlds that were light years away from Earth? The answer was simple. Humans had been traveling through space for decades, making friends and trading partners wherever they went. While the Zephyrians saw other species as subjects to be conquered, Humans saw them as potential allies to be respected. "This is impossible," Admiral Vexathera said. "The humans have only been in space for a few decades. How could they coordinate actions across the entire galaxy?" General Selak was studying the tactical display with growing fear. "They do not think like us, Admiral. While we were planning to conquer them, they were planning to liberate everyone we had already conquered." But Admiral Cross had one more surprise waiting. The entire battle around Earth had been designed to maneuver Admiral Vexathera's flagship into a specific position above Earth's moon. The alien commander thought she was claiming the high ground for a final assault. She had no idea she was moving into the center of humanity's ultimate trap. "All remaining human ships, withdraw to safe distance," Admiral Cross ordered. "Prepare for final phase." Captain Danny Wright had been waiting patiently in his ship, the UES Phantom, for this exact moment. His vessel looked like an ordinary supply ship on alien sensors. It was small, unarmed, and completely unremarkable. The perfect disguise for humanity's most terrible weapon. "Supply ship requesting permission to approach the flagship," Danny transmitted to Admiral Vexathera. "I am carrying surrender documents from Earth's government." Admiral Vexathera was suspicious, but her ship's sensors confirmed that the approaching vessel was indeed a simple transport. It had no weapons, no shields, and no obvious threats. After hours of fighting impossible human tactics, the idea of finally receiving a surrender seemed too good to pass up. "Permission granted," she replied. "Dock at Port 7. Any tricks and your ship will be destroyed instantly." Danny smiled as he guided his ship toward the massive alien flagship. The Eternal Dominion was 5 miles long and protected by the most advanced energy shields in the galaxy. It was beautiful and terrifying, a crystal palace floating in space. It was also about to become the site of the most spectacular explosion in human history. "Docking clamps engaged," Danny reported. "Beginning transfer of surrender documents." But Danny was not carrying documents. Hidden in the center of his innocent supply ship was humanity's most closely guarded secret, an artificial black hole generator. Dr. Emma Barnes had spent years developing the technology, creating a device that could generate a localized gravitational singularity. The weapon was based on human understanding of physics that went far beyond what other species had achieved. While the aliens had focused on making bigger energy weapons, humans had learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe itself. "Admiral Vexathera," Danny said as he began the activation sequence, "I have a message from the people of Earth." "What is your message, human?" she replied, expecting to hear words of surrender and defeat. "The message is this: we do not surrender, we do not kneel, and we do not forgive those who threaten our home." Danny pressed the final activation button. Deep inside his ship, exotic matter collapsed into a point smaller than an atom, but with the mass of a star. Space-time itself began to warp and twist around the artificial singularity. "What are you doing?" Admiral Vexathera demanded as her sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies. "Something you never expected," Danny replied calmly. "I am turning your flagship into a lesson that the galaxy will never forget." The artificial black hole began to grow, pulling in matter and energy from everything around it. The Eternal Dominions. Energy shields, designed to stop plasma weapons and particle beams, were completely useless against the fundamental force of gravity. The 5-mile-long flagship began to stretch and distort as gravitational forces tore it apart. Crystal hulls that had been designed to last for centuries cracked and shattered like glass. Advanced alien technology that had taken generations to develop was reduced to its component atoms in seconds. "Impossible!" Admiral Vexathera screamed, as her bridge began to collapse around her. "No species has mastered gravitational weapons." "Humans have," Danny said quietly, just before his own ship was consumed by the singularity he had created. The explosion was visible from Earth as a new star briefly appeared in the sky. The Eternal Dominion, along with several smaller alien ships that had been too close, simply vanished into the artificial black hole. When the singularity finally evaporated in a burst of Hawking radiation, nothing remained but empty space and scattered debris. On ships throughout the solar system, alien crews watched in horror as their most powerful vessel was destroyed by a simple human transport. The psychological impact was devastating. If humans could destroy the Eternal Dominion with a supply ship, what else were they capable of? Vostal looked around his bridge at his surviving crew members. They were looking back at him with hope in their eyes, hoping he would make the right decision. These were his people, his responsibility. Why should they die for Zephyrian glory? "All Kethmori ships," he broadcast on a frequency that only his species could access. "This is Captain Vostal. We are withdrawing from the battle. We did not come here to be sacrificed for alien ambitions." One by one, the golden Kethmori ships began turning away from Earth and heading for the edge of the solar system. They had not surrendered to the humans, but they were no longer fighting for the Zephyrians either. "Traitors!" Admiral Vexathera screamed. "Cowards! You are bound by treaty to fight!" "Treaties work both ways," Captain Vossatol replied. "You promised us equal treatment. Instead, you use us as cannon fodder. The treaty is broken." The withdrawal of the Kethmori ships created gaps in the alien battle line. Human forces immediately took advantage, pouring through the openings to attack more vulnerable targets. Ben. Taylor was not finished. "Veltani ships, you who value wisdom above all things, is it wise to continue a battle you cannot win? Is it wise to die for leaders who see you as expendable?" The Veltani were creatures of pure energy who prided themselves on logical thinking. Their commander, strategist Quindal, had been growing more concerned about the battle's progress. The tactical situation was clearly hopeless, yet Admiral Vexathera refused to acknowledge reality. "All Veltani vessels," Quindal announced. "Wisdom dictates withdrawal. We cannot win this engagement. Continuing to fight serves no logical purpose." The glowing Veltani ships began to fade from view as they activated their cloaking devices and disappeared from the battle. Like the Kethmori, they were not joining the humans, but they were no longer willing to die for the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral. Vexathera watched her alliance crumble before her eyes. Ships that had fought beside her for years were abandoning the battle. Her grand fleet was falling apart, not from human weapons, but from human words. "All remaining vessels, close ranks," she ordered desperately. "We can still win this battle, but..." Major Kate Sullivan was about to prove her wrong in the most direct way possible. She was floating in space in a simple EVA suit, leading a team of 12 human Marines toward a disabled Zephyrian command ship. The aliens had assumed that the damaged ship was safe because its hull had several large holes in it. In their minds, no one could possibly survive in the vacuum of space long enough to board a ship through those holes. They had forgotten that humans had been working in space for decades. EVA suits and magnetic boots were common tools for human workers. What seemed impossible to aliens was just another day at the office for humans. Magnetic clamps engaged. Kate reported as her team attached themselves to the alien hull. Beginning infiltration, the human Marines crawled through the hull breaches like insects entering a broken shell. Inside the ship, they found alien crew members frantically trying to repair the damage. The aliens were not expecting boarders and had no defense against the sudden appearance of armed humans inside their vessel. Within minutes, Kate's team had captured the ship's command center and its computer systems. The intelligence they found there was invaluable. Complete tactical information about the Zephyrian fleet, including the location and defenses of Admiral Vexathara's flagship. Admiral Cross, Kate transmitted back to the UES Defiance. We have the enemy fleet's tactical database, transmitting now. The information revealed something interesting. Many of the ships in the alien fleet were not as damaged as they appeared to be. They were shedding external armor and weapon pods to make themselves look crippled, while actually becoming faster and more maneuverable. Lieutenant Sam Peterson demonstrated this tactic perfectly. His frigate, the UES Lightning, had been pretending to be badly damaged for the past hour. Alien ships had been ignoring him, thinking he was no longer a threat. External armor jettisoned, Sam reported to his crew, revealing true configuration in 3, 2, 1. Now, the outer hull of his ship broke away, revealing a sleek, fast attack vessel underneath. What the aliens thought was a limping cripple was actually one of humanity's newest stealth ships. Sam's vessel suddenly accelerated to twice its previous speed and launched a devastating attack on an unsuspecting alien cruiser. "Impossible," shouted an alien captain. "That ship was nearly destroyed." "Negative," Sam replied with a grin. "That ship was wearing a disguise. Dr. Emma Barnes was preparing her most ambitious weapon yet." For months, human mining ships had been secretly installing gravity manipulation devices throughout the solar system. Now it was time to use them all at once. "Activating gravitational chaos field," she announced from her laboratory. Space itself began to behave strangely. Ships that tried to fly in straight lines found themselves pulled into spiral curves. Alien formations that had taken hours to organize were scrambled in minutes as gravity wells appeared and disappeared without warning. The artificial gravity fields created three-dimensional mazes in space. Human pilots who had trained extensively in these conditions could navigate the gravitational anomalies easily. Alien pilots, who had no experience with such tactics, found their ships spinning out of control. "Our navigation systems are useless," reported an alien captain. "Space itself has become our enemy." Admiral Vexathara's flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was the only large alien vessel still maintaining formation, but even her massive ship was struggling against the gravitational chaos. The 5-mile-long crystal vessel was being pulled in directions that its designers never anticipated. "Admiral," Sub-Admiral Kethvar reported, "we are detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the battle zone. The humans appear to be manipulating space-time itself." "That is impossible, Admiral," Vexathara replied. "Gravity manipulation requires technology we have never seen before." "Perhaps," said General Selak. "We have underestimated these humans more than we realized." The alien fleet was now scattered across millions of miles of space. Individual captains were making their own decisions about whether to fight or flee. Some ships were still trying to attack human positions. Others were attempting to retreat. Many were simply floating helplessly, their crews too confused and demoralized to take any action at all. Admiral Cross watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The enemy fleet that had once seemed overwhelming was now broken into small, manageable groups. His strategy of dividing the alien alliance had worked perfectly. All ships, he commanded. Begin final phase operations. Target enemy command vessels. Leave the fleeing ships alone, but destroy any that continue to threaten Earth. Human ships emerged from hiding places throughout the solar system. Fresh, reinforcements that had been kept in reserve joined the battle. The aliens suddenly realized that they had been fighting only a small portion of humanity's actual military strength. Captain Amy Rodriguez led a squadron of destroyers in a coordinated attack on an alien battle group. Her ships moved like a pack of wolves, striking from multiple directions simultaneously. The aliens, trained to fight in rigid formations, could not adapt to this fluid style of combat. "Human tactics make no sense," complained an alien captain as his ship took damage from 3 different directions at once. "How do we fight an enemy? That has no pattern?" The answer was that you could not fight chaos with order. The aliens had built their entire military philosophy on discipline, hierarchy, and predictable tactics. Humans had built theirs on flexibility, individual initiative, and constant adaptation. As the battle continued, it became clear that the humans were not trying to destroy every alien ship. They were targeting command vessels and communications centers, trying to prevent the enemy from reorganizing. Ships that attempted to surrender or retreat were allowed to leave. This merciful behavior confused the aliens even more. In their experience, victorious armies showed no mercy to defeated enemies. The fact that humans were letting some ships escape suggested either weakness or a level of strategic thinking that the aliens did not understand. Sergeant Kevin Park was causing even more trouble for the aliens. From his station on Europa, he had been intercepting alien communications and feeding false information into their network. Enemy ships were receiving orders that made no sense, causing even more confusion in their ranks. "Cruiser Squadron 7, advance to grid position 4 Alpha," he transmitted using captured alien communication codes. "But Admiral, that position is in the middle of a human minefield," the squadron commander replied. "Orders are orders," Kevin replied, perfectly imitating Admiral Vexathera's voice. The cruiser squadron advanced into the minefield and was immediately destroyed by hidden human mines. The explosion was so large it damaged 3 other alien ships that were nearby. Admiral Cross was demonstrating another human advantage: adaptive tactics. When the aliens learned to counter one of his strategies, he immediately switched to a different approach. His fleet never used the same attack pattern twice. "All ships pattern Delta," he ordered. The human fleet suddenly changed formation. Ships that had been attacking the alien left flank disappeared and reappeared on the right side. Vessels that had been moving slowly suddenly accelerated to maximum speed. The aliens' tactical computers could not keep up with the constant changes. "Captain, Amy Rodriguez showed why human ship design was superior for this kind of warfare. Her destroyer, the UES Hurricane, had been built in modules that could be separated during battle. When alien fighters surrounded her ship, she did something they never expected. Eject armor plating," she ordered. The outer hull of her ship broke, away in sections, revealing a smaller, faster vessel underneath. What the aliens thought was a crippled destroyer was actually a high-speed attack craft. Amy's ship suddenly accelerated past the surprised alien fighters and attacked their formation from behind. "Impossible!" shouted an alien pilot. "Ships do not change size during battle." "Human ships do," Amy replied as her weapons tore through. The alien squadron. Dr. Barnes introduced her most creative weapon. Human mining ships had been working in the asteroid belt for months, but they were not just mining rocks. They had been building something the aliens had never seen before: artificial gravity wells. "Activate the gravity disruptors," she ordered. Suddenly, the space around the alien fleet began to behave strangely. Ships that were trying to fly in straight lines found themselves pulled in unexpected directions. Alien pilots who had been trained to fight in zero gravity suddenly discovered that up and down existed in places where they should not. The artificial gravity fields created chaos in the alien formation. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. Fighter pilots lost control of their craft as gravity pulled them in directions their training had not prepared them for. "What is happening to our ships?" Admiral Vexithara demanded. "The humans are manipulating gravity itself," Sub-Admiral Kethvar reported. "Our ships are designed to fight in zero gravity. We cannot adapt to these changing conditions." The alien fleet, once organized and disciplined, was now scattered across space like leaves in a windstorm. Individual ships were making desperate decisions without coordination. Some tried to retreat, others advanced alone into human firing zones. A few simply stopped moving, their crews too confused to act. Admiral Cross watched the chaos with satisfaction. The aliens had entered the battle with overwhelming numerical superiority, but they had forgotten the most important rule of warfare. Numbers alone do not win battles. "All ships, final phase," he commanded. "Take them apart." Human vessels emerged from their hiding places among Jupiter's moons. Fresh ships that had been held in reserve joined the battle. The aliens suddenly found themselves surrounded by enemies they had not known existed. Captain Steve Johnson's sacrifice had not been in vain. His ramming attack had shown other human crews that their enemy could be beaten. Now every human ship fought with the knowledge that victory was possible. The tide of battle had turned completely. What had begun as an execution was now becoming a rout. The mighty Zephyrian Grand Fleet, the largest military force in galactic history, was being destroyed by 50 human ships and some hidden weapons on a moon. Admiral Vexithara stared at her tactical display in disbelief. Over half her fleet was gone. The remaining ships were scattered and demoralized. Her perfect formation had become a mob of frightened vessels running in all directions. "This cannot be happening," she whispered. "We are the most advanced species in the galaxy. How can primitives defeat us?" General Selak had stopped pacing. His golden scales had turned completely black with fear. "They do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like chaos itself. How do you defeat chaos?" The answer was simple, though the aliens did not understand it yet. You defeat chaos by becoming more chaotic than your enemy, and humans, as the aliens were learning, were very good at being unpredictable. Admiral Peter Cross knew that destroying the alien fleet was only half the battle. The other half was making sure they could never attack Earth again. For that, he needed to break up the alliance that had brought so many different species to fight against humanity. "Open a channel to the entire alien fleet," he ordered his communications officer. "All frequencies. I want every ship to hear this." Commander Ben Taylor, the fleet's psychological warfare specialist, stepped forward. He was a tall man with a calm voice that could make people trust him or fear him, depending on what he wanted to accomplish. "Attention, all alien vessels," Ben began. "This is Commander Ben Taylor of the United Earth Fleet. I have a message for the brave soldiers who are dying for Zephyrian lies." On ships throughout the alien fleet, crews stopped what they were doing to listen. Even Admiral Vexithara on her flagship could not block the transmission without cutting off her own communications. "Look around you," Ben continued. "Count your losses. The Zephyrians promised you an easy victory. They said human tactics were primitive and weak. How many of your friends have died for those lies? On the bridge of a Kethmori battleship, Captain Vostal listened with growing anger. His golden scales were scarred from battle damage, and half his crew was dead. Around him, other Keth Mori officers were beginning to whisper among themselves. "The human speaks truth," one of them said quietly. "We have lost more ships in this battle than in the last 10 campaigns." Ben's voice continued across all channels. "The Zephyrians told you that Earth's resources would be shared among all allies. But look at your battle positions. Which ships are in the front lines taking the most damage? Which ships are safely in the rear?" Captain Vossital checked his tactical display. It was true. Zephyrian ships were positioned behind the Allied vessels, using them as shields. The snake-like Keth Mori and the other Allied species were absorbing most of the human attacks, while the Zephyrians stayed safe. "This is propaganda," Admiral Vexithara broadcast to her fleet. "Do not listen to human lies. Stay in formation and fight." But the damage was already done. Ben Taylor had identified the weakness in every military alliance. Different species fighting together often had different reasons for being there. The Zephyrians wanted to expand their empire. The other species had been promised rewards that they were beginning to doubt they would ever receive. "Keth Mori warriors," Ben said, addressing the snake-like aliens directly. "Your people are proud fighters with a long history of honor. Why are you dying to make the Zephyrians richer? What do you gain from this war?" Captain Vossital had been asking himself the same question for hours. His species had joined the Zephyrian Empire because they were promised equal treatment and shared profits. But in every battle, Keth Mori ships were always placed in the most dangerous positions. "Commander Vostal," came Admiral Vexthara's voice over the communications system. "Move your squadron forward to engage the human defensive line." "Admiral," Vostal replied, "my ships have taken heavy casualties. Perhaps another squadron could—" "You have your orders, Commander. Advance immediately." Orvette, hidden behind Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. When the alien ships chased Tony around the moon, Nicole was ready for them. Her ship's railgun fired a solid metal rod at nearly the speed of light. The rod punched through all 3 alien ships like they were made of paper. "Railgun hit confirmed," Nicole reported. 3 enemy fighters destroyed. The aliens had energy shields designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons. They had never considered that someone might simply throw a piece of metal at them very fast. The kinetic energy was enough to penetrate any defense they had. Admiral Vexithara watched her fleet take more and more damage. Human ships that should have been destroyed hours ago were still fighting. Enemy vessels that looked badly damaged would suddenly reveal hidden weapons or unexpected speed. "Status report," she ordered. "We have lost 57 ships," Sub-Admiral Kethvar reported. "The humans have lost 12. 57 to 12. Admiral Vexithara could not believe what she was hearing. "That is impossible. We outnumber them 50 to 1. The humans are not fighting the way our tactical computers predicted. They do not follow any rules of civilized warfare." General Selak was pacing back and forth on the bridge, his tail lashing with anger. "They fight like wild animals. No honor, no dignity. How can we defeat an enemy that has no shame?" Admiral Vexithara stared out at the battle. Human ships darted between her massive vessels like minnows swimming around whales. They were too small and too fast for her big guns to target effectively. Every time her fleet tried to form a proper battle line, the humans would attack from an unexpected direction and break it up. "Admiral," Sub-Admiral Kethvar said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a strategic withdrawal." "Withdrawal?" Admiral Vexthara's voice rose to a shriek. "We have the largest fleet in galactic history. We cannot retreat from 50 primitive ships." But even as she spoke, she could see more alien vessels being destroyed. The humans were like a virus in her perfect formation, spreading chaos wherever they went. Nothing in her military training had prepared her for enemies who refused to fight fair. Admiral Peter Cross stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching his tactical display with calm eyes. The alien fleet was exactly where he wanted it. For 3 hours, his ships had been leading the enemy deeper into the solar system, toward Jupiter and its many moons. "Signal all ships," he said to his communications officer. "Execute Phase 2. What the aliens thought was chaos had actually been a carefully planned retreat. Every seemingly random movement had a purpose. Every desperate attack had been calculated to push the enemy fleet toward a specific location in space. On the alien flagship, Admiral Vexathara was growing more frustrated by the minute. Her perfect formation was in ruins. Human ships had scattered her fleet across millions of miles of space, breaking up the neat lines that made her forces so powerful. "Where are they leading us?" she demanded. "Toward the gas giant Jupiter, Admiral," her navigation officer replied. "The human ships appear to be using the planet's gravity to increase their speed. Then we will follow them and finish this. Order all ships to pursue. Do not let a single human vessel escape." But Admiral Cross was not trying to escape. He was leading the aliens into the most carefully prepared trap in human history. Colonel Ryan Foster sat in a hidden control room deep beneath the ice of Europa, Jupiter's fourth largest moon. Around him, dozens of technicians worked at computer stations, watching sensor displays that showed every ship in the battle. "Alien fleet approaching target zone," reported Sergeant Kevin Park, the team's communications specialist. "Range 2 million kilometers and closing." Colonel Foster smiled. He had been waiting for this moment for months. "All batteries prepare to fire. Target the largest ships first." The aliens had made a critical mistake. They assumed that primitive humans would only put weapons on their spaceships. They never considered that humans might build weapons on planets and moons as well. Hidden beneath Europa's frozen surface were 50 massive railgun installations. Each weapon was the size of a city block and could fire projectiles at nearly the speed of light. The aliens' energy shields were designed to stop plasma beams and particle weapons, not chunks of solid metal moving at relativistic speeds. "Admiral Vexathara," Colonel Foster spoke into his communicator, knowing the aliens would intercept the transmission. "Welcome to our solar system. I hope you enjoy your stay." "Fire all batteries." The surface of Europa erupted with light. 50 railgun installations fired simultaneously, sending metal projectiles screaming through space toward the alien fleet. The shots were invisible to the naked eye, but they hit their targets with the force of nuclear weapons. The first alien dreadnought simply disappeared. One moment it was there, a mile-long crystal ship bristling with weapons. The next moment it was a cloud of glowing debris spreading across space. "What happened?" Admiral Vexathara screamed. "Where did that attack come from?" "The moon, Admiral," her tactical officer replied. "The humans have built weapons on the moon." More railgun shots tore through the alien formation. Each impact destroyed or crippled a major warship. The aliens tried to return fire, but their energy weapons had a much shorter range than the human. Railguns. They were being shot at by enemies they could not reach. "All ships, advance to engagement range," Admiral Vexathara ordered. But advancing meant flying deeper into the killing field. As the alien ships moved closer to Europa, more hidden weapons opened fire. The humans had turned Jupiter's entire moon system into a fortress. Dr. Emma Barnes watched the battle from her laboratory aboard the UES Defiance. She was Earth's chief scientist and the creator of humanity's newest weapons. While other species focused on making bigger energy cannons, she had been working on something completely different. "Deploy the chaff clouds," she told her assistants. Human ships began releasing streams of tiny metal particles and reflective dust. To the aliens, it looked like the humans were trying to create a smokescreen. They had no idea what was really happening. The metal particles spread through space like a glittering fog. When alien ships fired their laser weapons through the cloud, something unexpected happened. The laser beams scattered and reflected in all directions, turning the aliens' own weapons against them. "Admiral!" shouted the weapons officer on the alien flagship. "Our lasers are reflecting back at us. The metal particles are acting like mirrors." Admiral Vexithara watched in horror as her own ships were hit by their own weapons. Laser beams that should have destroyed human vessels were bouncing off the metal clouds and striking alien hulls instead. "How is this possible?" she demanded. General, Selak was studying the tactical display with growing alarm. "The humans understand light and reflection better than we do. They are using physics against us." The aliens had another problem. Their ships were designed to fight in the organized formations they had used for centuries. When those formations were broken up, the individual captains did not know what to do. They had been trained to follow orders from above, not to think for themselves. Human ships, on the other hand, were built for independent action. Each captain was trained to make quick decisions without waiting for orders. When Captain Nicole Roberts saw an opportunity to attack, she took it immediately. When Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez needed to retreat, he did not ask permission. The space around Earth looked like a metal storm. Thousands of alien ships appeared from nowhere, their hulls shining with energy shields and crystal armor. The Zephyrian Grand Fleet had arrived exactly 72 hours after Admiral Vexithara's threat. Admiral Vexithara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The ship was 5 miles long and covered in blue crystal that glowed with inner light. Around her, hundreds of alien officers worked at control stations that looked like works of art. "Report," she commanded. 500 capital ships in position," said her second-in-command, a crystal creature named Sub-Admiral Kethvar. 2,000 cruisers ready, fighter squadrons deployed, total force strength is exactly as planned." Admiral Vexithara smiled. Through the huge windows of her bridge, she could see the small human defense fleet waiting for them. She counted the enemy ships carefully. 50 ships, she said with amusement. "They brought 50 ships against our thousands. Either they are very brave or very stupid." General Selak was also on the bridge, his golden scales reflecting the light from the crystal walls. "I vote for stupid," he hissed. "Look at their ships. They are made of plain metal, no energy shields, no crystal armor, just crude steel and iron." The human fleet was indeed small. At its center was a ship called the UES Defiance. It was long and gray, with weapon ports along its sides like an old sailing ship. Admiral Peter Cross commanded the human forces from this vessel. He was a man with gray hair and tired eyes, who had spent his whole life preparing for a war like this. "Sir," said his communications officer, a young woman named Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, "the alien flagship is sending us a message." "Put it on screen," Admiral Cross replied. Admiral Vexithara's face appeared on the main display. Her compound eyes looked like blue diamonds, and when she spoke, her voice filled the bridge like the sound of breaking glass. "Human Admiral," she said, "I am Admiral Vexithara of the Zephyrian Empire. You have one final chance to surrender. Order your ships to power down their weapons and prepare to be boarded." Admiral Cross stood up from his command chair. He was much older than Jake Morrison, with wrinkles around his eyes and scars on his hands from years of military service. "This is Admiral Peter Cross of the United Earth Fleet," he replied. "We do not surrender our home. If you want Earth, you will have to take it." The aliens on Vexthera's bridge began laughing. General Selak laughed so hard he had to hold onto a control station to keep from falling. 50 ships against thousands. Admiral Vexthera said, "Your bravery is admirable, but your tactics are suicide. Very well, you have chosen death over wisdom." The transmission ended. On the alien flagship, betting had already begun among the officers. Some bet the humans would last 10 minutes. Others said 5 minutes. A few cruel ones bet that the human ships would try to run away before any fighting started. "What do you think, General?" Admiral Vexthera asked Selak. "Less than one standard time unit," the snake-like alien replied. "Their ships are too small and too few. This will be target practice for our gunners." The alien fleet began to move forward. The ships stayed in perfect formation, like a parade in space. Each vessel knew exactly where it was supposed to be and what it was supposed to do. This was how civilized species fought wars. On the UES Defiance, Admiral Cross watched the enemy approach on his tactical display. The alien formation was beautiful and terrifying. Thousands of ships moving as one, their weapons already charging. "With deadly energy. All ships," he said into his communicator. "Execute Plan Chaos. Repeat, execute Plan Chaos." Something strange happened to the human fleet. Instead of forming neat lines like the aliens expected, the human ships scattered in all directions. Some dove toward Earth's moon. Others climbed high above the battle zone. A few actually flew toward the alien fleet, but not in any pattern. That made sense. On the alien flagship, the tactical officer looked confused. "Admiral, the human ships are breaking formation. They appear to be running away?" "Not running," said Admiral Vexthera. "Scattering like insects when you lift a rock. They have no discipline, no coordination. This is exactly what I expected from primitives." But something was wrong. The human ships were not running away. They were moving to positions around the alien fleet like wolves circling prey. Captain Amy Rodriguez piloted her destroyer, the UES Hurricane, through a field of asteroids near Mars. The rocks hid her ship from alien sensors. "Target lock on enemy cruiser," her weapons officer reported. "Fire missiles," Amy ordered. 6 metal rockets shot out from the Hurricane's launch tubes. They were not as fast as energy weapons, but they moved through space without making any light or heat. The alien cruiser never saw them coming. The missiles hit the enemy ship's engines. Explosions bloomed like flowers against the crystal hull. The cruiser began spinning out of control, its energy shields flickering and failing. "Impossible!" shouted the alien tactical officer. "Their primitive missiles should not be able to penetrate our shields." "Lucky hit," Admiral Vexthera said, but she sounded less certain than before. More human ships attacked from unexpected angles. Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez led a squadron of fighters that seemed to be retreating toward Earth. But when alien fighters chased them, Tony's ship suddenly turned around and attacked. The alien pilots were confused by this tactic. In civilized warfare, retreating ships did not turn around and fight. The human fighters used weapons the aliens had never seen before. Instead of energy beams, they fired streams of metal bullets. At incredible speed, the bullets tore through fighter wings like paper. Within minutes, half the alien fighter squadron was destroyed or damaged. "Report!" Admiral Vexthera demanded. "We have lost 30 fighters and 2 cruisers." Sub-Admiral Kethavar replied. His crystal body was flashing red with alarm. The humans are using tactics we do not understand. What kind of tactics? They do not fight in formation. Each ship acts independently. They attack, then disappear, then attack again from a different direction. It is like fighting ghosts. General Selak was no longer laughing. This is not how wars are supposed to be fought. Where is their honor? Where is their discipline? The worst surprise came when Captain Steve Johnson's cruiser, the UES Vengeance, was surrounded by 5 alien destroyers. The human ship was badly damaged and could not escape. In any civilized battle, Captain Johnson would have surrendered. Instead, he did something that shocked every alien in the fleet. All hands, abandon ship, he ordered his crew. Set collision course for the enemy, Flagship. Sir? His navigation officer asked. You heard me. Ram them. The UES Vengeance turned toward the largest alien ship in the group and accelerated to full speed. Its engines glowed white-hot as it built up momentum. The alien captain tried to move his ship out of the way, but he was too slow. The 2 ships collided in a burst of fire and metal. Both vessels were destroyed instantly. The explosion was so bright it could be seen from Earth. On the alien flagship, there was complete silence. No one spoke for several minutes. Finally, Admiral Vexus Thera found her voice. They destroyed their own ship just to damage ours? It appears so, Admiral, Sub-Admiral Kethavar replied quietly. But why? The crew could have surrendered. They could have lived as prisoners. General Selak's scales had turned from gold to dark brown with fear. They chose death over capture. What kind of species does that? The human fleet continued its strange, chaotic attacks. Ships appeared and disappeared like lightning. They used the gravity of planets and moons to change direction in ways that alien computers could not predict. Some human vessels released clouds of metal fragments that confused enemy sensors. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to be coordinating their attacks without using normal communications. Admiral Vexathara's intelligence officers could not find any command signals between human ships, yet they worked together like parts of the same machine. How are they talking to each other? She demanded. We do not know, Admiral. They are using communication methods we cannot detect or understand. Lieutenant Commander Tony Martinez demonstrated another human innovation. His damaged fighter was being chased by 3 alien ships. Instead of trying to outrun them, he led them into a trap. Captain Nicole Roberts was waiting in her... The huge metal room was filled with alien voices. Strange creatures from across the galaxy sat around a massive table made of glowing crystal. Some looked like giant insects with hard shells. Others moved like snakes but walked on 2 legs. A few seemed to be made of pure light, floating above their chairs. At the head of the table sat Admiral Vex Thara. She was 12 feet tall and covered in blue crystal armor. Her 4 arms moved as she spoke, and her voice sounded like breaking glass. She was the leader of the Zephyrian Empire, the most powerful force in known space. Today we discuss the newest species, she said. Her compound eyes looked at a small screen showing a blue and green planet. They call themselves humans. They come from a world called Earth. The other aliens began to laugh. General Selak, a snake-like creature with golden scales, hissed with amusement. Humans? What kind of name is that? A stupid name for a stupid species, said strategist Quindal. He was made of white light, and his voice sounded like wind chimes. They only just learned to fly between stars. How can they be a threat to anyone? Commander Jake Morrison stood up from his chair. He was the only human in the room, and he looked very small next to the giant aliens. His brown hair was cut short, and he wore a simple blue uniform with Earth's flag on the shoulder. Next to him sat Captain Lisa Yang, a woman with black hair, tied back in a neat bun. She carried a metal case filled with data about human military forces. "With respect," Jake said, "we may be new to space travel, but humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have learned many things about combat." The aliens laughed even louder. Admiral Vexithara's crystal armor clinked as she shook with laughter. "Fighting wars? With what? Sticks and stones?" Lisa opened her case and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button and images appeared in the air above the table. The first image showed human soldiers carrying rifles. "These are our primary weapons," she said. "We call them kinetic firearms. They fire metal bullets at high speed." General Selak nearly fell from his chair laughing. "Metal bullets? You throw pieces of metal at your enemies? How primitive." "We use plasma cannons," said a voice from across the room. It came from Commander Vorth, a creature that looked like a walking tree with red bark. "Our weapons can melt through any armor. And we have energy shields," added Admiral Vexithara. "Your metal bullets would bounce off like raindrops." Lisa changed the image. Now it showed human tanks rolling across a desert. "We also use armored vehicles for ground combat. These tanks have thick metal armor and large guns." The aliens laughed again. Strategist Quinn Dowell floated higher above his chair. "Metal armor? We stopped using metal armor 1,000 years ago. Our shields are made of pure energy. They can stop anything." Jake felt his face turn red with anger, but he kept his voice calm. "Perhaps you would like to see how we fight?" "Oh yes," said Admiral Vexithara. "Please show us your primitive tactics. We could use some entertainment." Lisa pressed another button. The air above the table filled with images of human battles. Soldiers moved through forests, hiding behind trees and rocks. They appeared from nowhere to attack, then disappeared again. "This is called guerrilla warfare," Lisa explained. "Small groups of fighters attack larger forces, then retreat before the enemy can fight back." "Cowards," hissed General Selak. "Real warriors fight face to face. They do not hide like children playing games." The next image showed human soldiers working together. Some carried heavy weapons while others provided cover. Aircraft flew overhead while tanks moved on the ground. "We call this combined arms tactics," Jake said. "Different types of forces work together to support each other." "Chaos," said Commander Vorth. "In civilized warfare, each type of unit has its proper place. Infantry fights infantry. Ships fight ships. Your way is just confusion." "Admiral," Vexithara stood up. Her crystal armor caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. "Enough of this nonsense. Let me tell you how real wars are fought." She waved one of her 4 arms, and new images appeared. They showed massive spaceships firing beams of bright energy at each other. The ships moved in perfect lines like dancers in a ballet. "This is proper combat," she said. "Ships line up and fire until one side wins. Clean, simple, honorable." "Your way is like watching wild animals fight," added General Selak. "No skill, no honor, just violence." Jake looked around the room at all the alien faces. Some were laughing. Others looked bored. None of them seemed to take humans seriously. "We have over 500 worlds in our empire," Admiral Vexithara continued. "We have conquered species much more advanced than yours. Your Earth will make a fine addition to our collection." "And if we refuse?" Jake asked. The laughter stopped. The room became very quiet. Admiral Vexithara's compound eyes focused on Jake, like a microscope looking at a bug. "Then you will be destroyed," she said. Her voice was cold as space. "Your primitive weapons cannot hurt our ships. Your metal bullets cannot pierce our shields. Your chaotic tactics cannot defeat our disciplined fleets." She walked around the table toward Jake and Lisa. Each step made a sound like breaking bottles. "I will give you a demonstration of real power. I will send the largest fleet in galactic history to your little blue world. You will see what happens when primitives try to fight their betters." General Seelock smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "How long do you think they will last, Admiral?" "Perhaps an hour," she replied. "Maybe less. Their ships are made of metal. Ours are made of pure energy and crystal. It will not be a battle. It will be an execution." Jake stood up straighter. "We will not surrender our world." "Then you will watch it burn," Admiral Vexithara said. She turned to the other aliens. "Prepare the Grand Fleet. 500 capital ships, 2,000 cruisers, 10,000 fighters. We will show the galaxy what happens to species that refuse to join the Empire willingly." The aliens began talking excitedly. They were already planning how to divide Earth's resources among themselves. Some wanted the water, others wanted the metals buried in the ground. A few were interested in keeping humans as slaves. Lisa packed her equipment back into the case. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. "How long do we have?" 72 hours, Admiral Vexithara replied. "Use that time to evacuate anyone you wish to save. When my fleet arrives, there will be no mercy for those who remain." Jake and Lisa walked toward the door. Behind them, the aliens continued to laugh and make jokes about human stupidity. They talked about primitive weapons and chaotic tactics, as if they were discussing children's toys. As the door closed behind them, Jake heard Admiral Vexithara's voice one last time. "Send word to all our allies. Tell them to come and watch. Let them see what happens when inferiors challenge their superiors. This will be the shortest war in galactic history." The corridor outside was empty and cold. Jake and Lisa walked in, silence toward their small transport ship. They had 72 hours to get home and prepare for the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. "Do you think they're right?" Lisa asked quietly. "Are our tactics really that primitive?" Jake thought about all the wars humans had fought. All the times smaller forces had defeated larger ones through cleverness and determination. He thought about generals who had won battles against impossible odds by doing things their enemies never expected. "Maybe," he said, "but sometimes being primitive is an advantage. Sometimes the old ways work better than anyone expects." Their ship was small and simple compared to the massive alien vessels around them. But as they flew away from the Crystal Palace toward Earth, Jake began to smile. The aliens thought they knew everything about warfare. They were about to learn how wrong they could be.